Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. All eyes were on Old Trafford as Solskjaer's United prepared to host Pep City in the Manchester derby. Both sides have had shaky starts to the season, but a win here could have taken either into the top four. In the end, the game finished 0-0 in a tactical encounter. The XG showed that City were wasteful as always, coming out with 1.26 XG compared to United's 0.59. The XG time map indicated that City were creating better chances from pretty early on. Interestingly, this result means that Ole still has a positive head-to-head against Guardiola. But what tactics did both managers use? Let's take a look. A quick reminder of the formations used by both sides, as seen on the OneFootball app. OneFootball will get you match updates, formation updates, as well as player and team stats, and so much more. And the best part is, you can get it absolutely free through the sponsored link in the description below. Let's first look at what United did with their 46% possession. United did primarily look to play out short, with De Gea attempting only 9 long balls throughout the 90. Both centre-backs tended to drop into the box on the goal kick, whilst Jesus and De Bruyne waited outside the box ready to press. And United tended to build down the right towards Wan-Bissaka, who Sterling would then look to press, with the forwards dropping deeper to cut off the inside option, whilst Fernandes was man-marked deeper by Rodri or Fernandinho. United quickly adapted to this, however, with Fernandes now dropping into the right-hand space as the free man, allowing them to progress the ball up this flank. This was aided by Greenwood, who would move high and wide to pin Cancelo deep and prevent him from pressing. At times, City would shift Rodri across, but this would leave them vulnerable in midfield with just a single pivot, and United could then look to take advantage of this space. They had more success with this when they could initially drag City to the right before switching it to the left in the deep build-up. The speed of passing would mean that the remaining pivot will be dragged wide to the right towards Pogba, leaving a potential gap in midfield for the forward to drop into, but they weren't able to execute this pattern as often as they would have liked. We saw similar patterns in open play, where City initially pushed up De Bruyne to make it look like a 4-4-2. In reality, it was more of a 4-4-1-1, as the City forward would only push up when the ball was with their centre-back on their side of the pitch, whilst the other then dropped onto Fred, and vice versa. It also meant that their press was more of a way to prevent progression from United rather than to win the ball, and they ended with a passes per defensive action of over 18. On the right hand side, Sterling would initially look to tuck in to cut off the angle for the pass into the pivot, so Wan-Bissaka could initially freely receive the ball before Sterling could push onto him when the forward moved deeper. So, in the second half in particular, Ole tried to exacerbate this right-hand overload. We often saw McTominay drop into a wide centre-back position in the build-up, looking to potentially draw Sterling higher on the press. This would then free Wan-Bissaka or Fernandes if he moved across into the space, so if Cancelo pushed high to press, there would be space for United to play into. But, for the most part, City were able to deal with this. And City did use a number of interesting mechanisms in possession, which they had 54% of. From the goal kick, Stones and Ruben Diaz generally split the width of the box, with a pivot deeper to receive the ball, and United were more aggressive in their press with Fernandes on the pivot, and the forwards ahead of him ready to push high. This meant City were forced long more often, with Edison attempting 14 long balls. When United held this shape, City could have success down the left. With Greenwood narrow, when Cancelo received the ball, Wan-Bissaka was often aggressive in trying to press him. Naturally, this left Sterling free higher up, which forced Lindelof across, leaving the defense potentially exposed. And generally, City were able to come out of their first phase. United's diamond on paper was closer to a traditional 4-4-2, with Pogba and Greenwood wide, and Fernandes pushing alongside Rashford. If City remained in this default shape, it led to a stalemate deep, getting stuck in the dreaded U, where they'd pass from fullback to centre-back to fullback, and so on, as the United wide men could easily join the press. So City shifted to building up in a back three with one of the pivots dropping deep. This would allow Walker higher and give Mahrez the license to roam in from the wing, and we did see him pick up the ball in these regions and look to create. But United quickly adapted to prevent central progression, as the forwards shifted from pressing the backline, where they would have had the man disadvantage anyway, to sitting deeper to cover the pivot. And with only one man here at times, City couldn't progress through the centre. So only 23% of their attacks came centrally. We saw them try to adapt, with De Bruyne or Jesus dropping into the midfield to provide the secondary option. But still, United were generally able to deal with this. Things did improve when Ferran Torres came on. Unlike Mahrez, who tends to cut in, he was happy to hug the touchline. This meant City could still build with a 3 if needed, and Walker could be the second pivot. The difference here was it allowed De Bruyne to remain higher between the lines, which would pin United's midfield deeper, giving City more time in these regions. And Walker looked to find Ferran often to get him 1 versus 1 against Shaw, and although Shaw defended well for the most part, it did lead to some promising situations. Overall, when considering the league table before the match, this isn't necessarily a bad point for either side. Both teams will be encouraged by the astute defensive performances, although creativity was lacking at times. But I'd love to know, what other tactics did you notice not mentioned in this video? What did you make of both sides? Drop it down in the comments below. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.